Everybody, to kick off the first week of 14 teams and 14 weeks. Joining me, as always, reach out to him all the time, talk about Alabama, Tony Tsoukalas. You can check him over at Bama Insider, where he is the Alabama beat writer. And Tony, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show this week.
Sure, man. Anytime.
We were talking off air. We're in May, but it is not that long before we're going to be playing football again. It feels like a long time, but it really isn't.
Yeah, I'm doing package breakdowns for the site, so breaking down different who's going to line up in certain packages, and it's already May and I'm still doing that. So, I mean, it really never stops. I mean, you'll blink twice and we'll be in fall camp, right?
Yeah, and the SEC Media Days right around the corner, hoping we'll have some normalcy with that because that's something I missed last year. So it's just around the corner, and I can't wait. I know May is kind of like that slow time for college football stuff, but since we didn't get off the draft, but it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward and glad to have you on talk about Alabama. And, before we jump into 2021, the upcoming season, looking back at 2020, and I had you on before the national championship game. I believe this is the first time we have chatted since Alabama won the national title. Just, looking back at last season's team, just the accomplishment that team did to go undefeated in the SEC when everything that was going on. I mean, you lose your coach for a game. I mean, you lose Nick Saban. You thought you was going to lose him for another game. With the COVID testing and everything, just the great accomplishment that Alabama team had last season, winning the national title with everything they had in front of them.
I think when you look at this Alabama team, it's, in my opinion, it's the best team that Saban has. And let's be honest, it could be the best team college football has ever seen. I mean, it's right up there, and maybe the LSU team before it as well in that conversation as well. Definitely the best offense are, in that discussion as well. But this team overcame a lot. I mean, look, the 10-game SEC schedule was crazy, and they navigated it flawlessly. Really wasn't that many close calls for this Alabama team, too. They went undefeated, and, I mean, a little bit of a kind of messy game against Ole Miss, maybe a little bit of a messy game in the SEC championship game against Florida, a bad first half against Georgia, but then they kind of stormed ahead in the second half. Other than that, it was pretty much blowouts, and so it was a slaughter fest, and it was like I said, one of the best teams I've ever seen, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where you had Mac Jones and you had Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner. Look, you had the best quarterback, the best wide receiver, the best running back, and the best offensive line all on the same team in 1 year, which was just absolutely insane. So it was definitely, it was fun to watch. I don't think we're going to see anything like it, at least for some time now. But then again, I said that about the LSU offense, and then this Alabama one came rolling along. So maybe that's just what college football is like now. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find a team as good as this last Alabama team.
I think it's going to be a while until we have a team with 3 Heisman finalists like that again. Like what you said with Mac Jones, Najee Harris, and Devontae Smith. That's unreal. I mean, it's almost like some teams say, man, that's unfair. You got 3 Heisman finalists. How are we supposed to stop that? Because to me, Alabama was so good last year because you couldn't stop them. Okay, sure. Try to stop the pass. We'll just turn around and hand it to Najee Harris. Stop Najee Harris. Okay, we've got these receivers that'll beat you. There was just no way to stop them.
Yeah, it's not taking anything away from Devontae Smith, but you could have flipped the coin another way, and Mac Jones wins it. I think if Jalen Waddle doesn't get hurt, I think the ball gets spread out the same amount, and then you're looking at probably Mac Jones winning the Heisman. If people would have tried to stop the pass more, and then that might have opened the door for Najee Harris. I mean, either way, I mean, you're talking about it could have went to all 3 of those guys, especially Mac Jones too. If you look at the season, I mean, he broke the NCAA record for completion percentage and passing efficiency. So I mean, how often do you have a guy that throws for 4,500 yards, breaks 2 NCAA records, and doesn't win the Heisman? So it just shows you how great of a receiver Devontae Smith is, and it was really an unstoppable force.
Yeah, talking about Mac Jones, and before we jump into this upcoming team, just with him going into the NFL, and we talked about him a lot, I think last year in the preview, and I was really looking forward to what he was going to do for Alabama last year. But now you look at him going to New England Patriots, a perfect match, really. I mean, when you go from Saban to Belichick, just what are your feelings on Mac Jones playing at the next level, or where do you think his ceiling's going to be?
I think he's going to be good. I think it's a good scheme fit. Look, if you're worried about the things that Mac Jones, doesn't have compared to the other quarterbacks, it's mobility. But then he's going to have one of the better offensive lines in New England, so he should be able to have time to work in the pocket. He could have a little bit better receivers, but New England brought in Bourne and Aguilar, and I know that they also brought in Johnny Smith and Hunter Henry at tight ends. And when you're looking for a young quarterback, having those nice steady tight end targets, that always seems to help. Then you've got the same scheme fit that I'm not saying that Mac Jones is going to be Tom Brady, but he does a lot of the things well that Tom Brady did well. So I think that's going to fit in really well with New England. So I like that fit there. He's got a decent running game, like I said, the offensive line. So I like him. Somebody brought up possibly like an Eli Manning. Like, look, I don't know if Mac Jones is going to be the best quarterback in the NFL, but I think he's going to be a guy that can come in and win you a Super Bowl. And when you put that kind of guy with the New England, with a Bill Belichick coach offense, you can put together a Hall of Fame career with that. I mean, I think Mac's going to put up some nice numbers. I think he's going to be a very capable quarterback. I think he'll probably develop into one of these top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think he's going to be a guy that, you put a good team around him, he's going to, be in position to win you some Super Bowls. And that's what I'm thinking with him. He's not going to make mistakes. He's going to be accurate, and he's smart. And I think he's just got all the tools to have a really long NFL career. It's just, it really, I like the place that he landed too, because I think New England's going to be able to utilize his skill set really well.
Yeah, and just a lot of people see Tom Brady, the quarterback he is now, and what he was the last 3 Super Bowls for the Patriots. I think a lot of people forget those first 3, and I hate using this term, but he was what people call a game manager.
Sure.
He was not the Tom Brady slinging it all over the place like he is now, or the last through New England. And you look at New England, going to the NFL, they look like they have a good defense. They're building a good offensive line, good offense around Mac Jones. And look, Cam Newton, I wouldn't be shocked if he starts day one, but we all know he's probably going to get hurt. I mean, it's just his history right now. So chances are, I believe Mac Jones will start, and he's that kind of quarterback that just will not make mistakes at the next level. I believe that. And that's a lot. I'm not saying he is Tom Brady, but that's very similar to what Tom Brady was during the first, Super Bowl runs that the Patriots had in the early 2000s.
I definitely agree, and I think that's the way that they're going to use him until he can kind of gain that trust. And if you like I said, if you look at the way that the offense is kind of put together up there in New England, they're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. They're going to be running the ball a lot. And it might be some short passes, some game management type passes. And that's not saying that that's all Mac Jones is ever going to be in the NFL. But starting off, that's kind of how you have to kind of, grow in a new quarterback. And so I kind of expect him to be treated a lot like Tom Brady was treated in his early years. And look, New England won a Super Bowl with that Tom Brady. So that's not saying that Mac won't have success doing that. But I think, like I said, the offense at its current state is really built well for Mac if he's going to be broken in and kind of given the reins early in New England.
Looking at this upcoming season, Alabama and New England connection, Bill O'Brien, of course, worked under Bill Belichick, head coach at Houston Texans. And I have said, and some people may get mad at me for this if there are any NFL fans listening to this too, I think the head coach, Bill O'Brien, is good. The general manager, Bill O'Brien, was not the good part of that situation. But with him coming in replacing Sark, are you expecting to see a difference in the offense? I mean, of course, I know different quarterback from going from Mac Jones, Bryce Young, but other than that, just kind of stylistically the way the offense is going to look, do you foresee it being a lot different than what Sark was running?
There'll be quirks, but I don't think it's going to be just drastically different. I don't think Nick Saban's going to let anything be drastically different. Now, if you look at this season to last season, obviously you have a totally different style quarterback. So you might be seeing some different things that you can do with Bryce Young that you necessarily couldn't do with Mac Jones and vice versa. Obviously, that's Bill O'Brien would be a bad offensive coordinator if he didn't, find a way to utilize Bryce Young's mobility and his skills. But I don't think they're just gonna throw away the game plan that got them, two amazing offenses. I'm pretty sure they're going to take a lot from what Sarkisian, installed, and kind of it's just more of an evolution than just a total rebuild.
Look, I got to tell you, Bill O'Brien, you're under pressure. You got to get your quarterback to the NFL because Lane Kiffin, Brian Dable and Sark. I mean, Alabama is now turning, we've heard the receivers from Alabama from the last couple of years say this is a, wide receiver you. Alabama's become a quarterback you, because there's a very good chance. We were talking about Mac Jones. You have 3 quarterbacks starting in the NFL that's upcoming year with Tua, Jalen Hurts, and now Mac Jones. So where did you see, especially what you saw out of spring game and spring with Bryce Young? Where are you seeing him at now in his development as he looks to take over the job?
Yeah, I think it's all about confidence, and I think he's getting it. And I think once he gets that confidence, you're going to see him make some decisions a lot better. I think in the spring game there were some times where he really looked like the case, like this is the 5-star kid everyone's been expected. There's a little bit of lulls at times during the 8A game, but I just expect him to grow throughout the year. I really like him as a quarterback. I think he's super talented, and I think he has a chance to be, that Heisman level. Are you expecting that from him year one? I don't know. But I think he's going to be a great quarterback. It's going to get into the NFL. I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC this year. It's all about, how quickly he can pick things up. And when you look at this Alabama team, if they're going to be successful, they're going to need Bryce Young to kind of step up and be that guy and be that playmaker. You saw he has that ability. You saw it in 8A. You're going to also just need him not to make mistakes. And, as a young quarterback, that could be a big ask. But I think you're going to see a more mature, more confident Bryce Young than you did in maybe some of those mop-up moments that you saw last year.
And, with him, and it's one thing, and I was really thinking about this last night as I was prepping for our conversation. When you look at this Alabama team, surrounding him, there's, a lot of Alabama's talented. There's talent all over the field, but inexperience at wide receiver now. Even at running back, Brian Robinson's, expected to be the starter there, and Minchie's there, and Slade Bolden is there as well at receiver. But obviously they're replacing a lot of guys. So do you think also this is going to be one interesting thing for Alabama early on in the season, just kind of that learning curve, just kind of figuring out who they are offensively with all those players that did leave?
I think the biggest thing that they've got to, really replace is that offensive line. I think people forget how great that offensive line was with Landon Dickerson and Alex Leatherwood and Deontay Brown. And so they're going to have Evan Neal back. They're going to have Emil Ekiyor back. And both those guys are great. They don't get talked about enough. But I do think that there might not be that level of comfort that Mac Jones always had. I think it actually plays well that Alabama is getting a guy like Bryce Young that can move around and buy some extra time if he needs it. So I think that might actually end up being useful to kind of make that change in quarterback when you have a lesser offensive line. Or I don't know if it's going to be too much of a lesser offensive line, but it's definitely going to be an offensive line that's going to have to gel. So maybe having a guy like Bryce Young back there that can kind of make a defender miss. We saw him do that in the 8A game, and then he hit Roydell Williams on the right sideline for a big game after making somebody miss. So if he's able to do that, I think that this offensive line has the talent that it can gel and really be what we're expecting it to be.
Just a thought on the 8A and these spring games. I always feel bad for these quarterbacks when they know good and well they would have made a touchdown run, and then they just get slightly tagged, and then they have to stop altogether.
You say that, but then there's also some times where they avoid a sack, or whatever, and you can tell that the defensive line's not coming at full speed. So I don't know. I think it might balance its way out. When they're making a run or something, is the defensive player, does he have to, in the back of his head, he has to say oh man, I can't, annihilate Bryce Young. So yeah, but you can't take, like you said, you can't take too much out of these stats anyways, because it is just a scrimmage.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you got a quarter, all these teams, it's not the full offense, anyways. Especially I know at Alabama, they're not going to give anything away, especially for that opener with Miami. Oh, you look at receiver, and I mentioned John mentioned Slade Bolden. Who's somebody outside of those two you're looking to step up for Alabama? I know they just got the transfer coming in, Jameson Williams from Ohio State, speedster, and he was a really good recruit coming out of high school as well. But just kind of like the number 3 guy, who do you see as some receivers that may step up for Alabama?
Ajee Hall was really exciting during 8A and during the spring, and he's a big guy. Alabama's not really necessarily had the 6'2" and taller receivers. They look at Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, I think was 6'1". You've got smaller guys that can move, and so having a guy like Ajee Hall that can kind of give you some more of that size. Trayshawn Holden too, they give you that size. But I'm going to go Javon Baker. It seems like he's always been on the cusp. And last year, every week it was like, "Oh, is this the week that Javon Baker is going to break out?" He can make some, just amazing catches, some one-handers. I mean, go back and look at his high school film. It's jaw-dropping. And I just think that, with that second year in the program, maybe he's the guy that breaks out. So I'm going to circle Javon Baker, but it really could be like 3 or 4 guys when you kind of break it down.
Yeah, and what they've got sitting at tight end too with Billingsley and there. I mean, he was a guy last year. I remember he really felt like he came on toward the end of the season. We talked about how Belichick and 2 tight ends. Obviously Bill O'Brien coming from that. I mean, you got to think with O'Brien. Like I think the Patriots were running a lot of 2 tight ends when he was offense coordinator with the Patriots. I kind of wonder, we see that because Alabama's got a good stock of tight ends too.
Yeah, I mean, well, that would be their weakest unit on offense. But then you look at a guy like Billingsley can really provide a threat in the receiving game. And then look, if Cameron Latu, the former outside linebacker, if he can come in and play like he did in the spring, which was I think 4 touchdowns and 3 scrimmages,
Wow.
Look, that's a whole nother option for Alabama. And good luck defenses if they can kind of up that tight end unit. We'll see if Cameron Latu will be able to kind of carry that over into the fall. But at the very least, Jaleel Billingsley, I think, is going to be a big part of this offense, kind of more in the mold of, the production they had gotten from Irv Smith and OJ Howard. I think you're going to start seeing that tight end position be utilized in the passing game a lot more this next season.
We look at this defense. I think last year, early on, the Alabama defense people were critical. We talk about the Ole Miss game and a little bit the Georgia game, but as the season went on, this defense really settled in. Yeah, you lose Patrick Surtain, you lose, Dylan Moses. Alabama defense loses guys every year, but this defense is pretty set, and we're not even mentioning, they got a transfer from Tennessee. Let's hope I'm saying their name correctly. Henry To'oTo'o coming in, Tennessee's leading tackler coming in now, and you add him into this linebacking core. It's really good with Alabama. I mean, the defense is set. So, we talk about maybe if there's some hiccups offensively, Alabama, I mean, still, like I said, talent's there. They've got a defense over there on the side that comes back with a lot of experience.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this front 7, it is absolutely amazing. Maybe there's not that name grabber on the defensive line, but you've got a lot of guys like LeBron Ray's coming back. You've got DJ Dale's established name, Justin Aboigbe, Byron Young, Tim Smith. So there's a lot of names right there that are just solid. Fadarian Mathis. So a lot of names right there that are just solid defensive linemen. And then when you get into the linebacking core, it's just absolutely jaw-dropping talent. I think you've got the best pass rushing duo in Will Anderson Jr. and Chris Allen on the outside. And that's going to be just nightmare to stop for offenses. And then now you have one of the better inside linebacking duos with Henry To'oTo'o and Christian Harris. And then let's not also count out Jalen Moody. Everyone likes Henry T and what he can bring to the defense, but let's not also count out the guy that was doing really well this spring, doing really well last season. Jalen Moody's another guy that could partner next to Christian Harris as well. So they're deep. I mean, look, they got Shane Lee, who started as a freshman. So it's truly a great front 7. And then all the secondary is losing is, yes, he's an All-American, but outside of Patrick Surtain, it's the same secondary. So if they can get in some production and maybe Jalen Armour-Davis can step in into that vacant cornerback spot, then I think the secondary can be pretty decent as well. So you're talking about one of the better defenses Alabama's seen in a while.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird, actually. There's so many players on the defense coming back. It just seems like a year in, year out, or saying, okay, Alabama's replacing this guy, so many guys. But just the fact is in the luxury that Pete Golding has now, where you got so many guys in the system. I mean, I just think this Alabama defense, I don't really think going into, as we're in the off season, I'm sure to get ramped up as we get closer to the season, but how good this defense really, really could be. I mean, they were the best, I think, at the end of the year with the SEC last year. So it is just, to me, I think they're going to be a very hard team to, score on. And then last year, there was a lot of points scored. I think college and professional, because I think the way you had to do practices last year was different. Now that Alabama's had to spring, and look, everybody else has too, but then going in, you could have more practice schedule. What this defense is going to be capable of doing this upcoming season, I think it should be scary to the rest of the SEC in college football.
Definitely. I mean, this is, like I said, this is going to be one of the better defenses that Alabama's had in a while, and if they can get that offense to click, they're going to be a real juggernaut. Because I don't expect the offense to click the same way as it did last year. So that might open up a chance to kind of slow down Alabama, but you're also not going to be able to score on Alabama as much because I think the pass rushes, when you look at this Alabama defense, what's the biggest difference is you saw the light bulb kind of click for Will Anderson, pairing him next, across from Chris Allen. And then you've got guys like Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o that are going to be coming up the middle as well. This is a very athletic defense, a defense that's going to be in the backfield a lot. And I'm just expecting big things, and I wouldn't want to be a quarterback going up against it.
No. I was looking over the depth chart and I said, I'm glad I talk about football. I never played football and don't get to deal with these guys because these guys coming at you is scary. That's probably why maybe Bryce Young was happy to have that black jersey on there in spring with all the guys Alabama has that can get to the quarterback. Oh, looking at the Alabama schedule for this coming year, of course, you opened up with Miami. You got the early season matchup at Florida, which Florida's replacing a lot of people, from what they lost last year. Of course, you end the season. Auburn. I just look up and down the schedule. I don't really see a point there where Alabama could maybe get a hiccup. Do you see anything with the schedule that maybe could bother? Because look, I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of people out there that are high on A&M coming into the season. I think there's a big jump between Alabama and the rest of the West, and I'm like with Jimbo Fisher outside of Jameis Winston at Florida State. Prove it to me. I'm not, thinking, what he said, over the weekend. You could talk about that. But where do you see any potential upset possibilities with Alabama's schedule?
So, I mean, you always got to look at the Texas A&M game, especially when it's in Kyle Field. But the one I'm actually maybe looking at is Ole Miss right before it. Lane Kiffin played Alabama really tough at Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah.
I love Matt Corral as a quarterback. I think, last year I was really high on Mac Jones, and I thought like he's going to be the surprise quarterback, could be a first rounder. I kind of feel the same way about Matt Corral. I think he's a guy that we might be talking about as a first rounder next year. I just really like his game. I think he's really deadly quarterback. He can hurt you with both his feet and his arm. And so Lane Kiffin with another year of him, watch out. I think that could be big. I know he loses some weapons too, but I'm kind of circling that Ole Miss game. I think that could be a little bit of a headache, especially if they're looking ahead to the game at Texas A&M.
So no worry for nightmare situations in Jordan-Hare this upcoming year for Alabama, because that is all at Jordan-Hare, which that was with Gus. Brian Harsin, their new era there at Auburn. But
we'll see if Gus left behind some leprechaun dust for Harsin to see if maybe they can have some of that voodoo that always happens at Jordan-Hare. We'll have to see.
So, it seems like every year there's a new team. This is the team of the offseason. See, like Georgia is it. Like everybody's saying, okay, is this the year Kirby Smart's going to, take that leap? Is he finally going to knock off Alabama? Because in my opinion, it's got to be Alabama and Georgia in Atlanta this upcoming year. These are the best two rosters in the conference. I mean, it should be these two, but Georgia just had that issue with getting past Alabama. Do you see Georgia on the other side if these two meet? I mean, we're talking way in December, I know, but just on paper, as Georgia is a team that might be capable of giving Alabama a game, and if they do meet in Atlanta and maybe upset them.
They definitely can, but I'm a little bit worried about this Georgia team too, because it's tough to start off against the Clemson, and I'm not sure they're going to win that game, and then you start off with a loss. It's just tough to start a season off with a loss. It's nice to have that tough game early to kind of wake you up. But if this is the Georgia team that's supposed to be the one that knocks off Alabama, I wouldn't want to start it off with Clemson as my first game. I think I'd want an easier game, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, if Georgia does get there and they are, I think they'll be pretty battle tested, obviously, and they've got a roster that can really give Alabama some trouble too. And look, eventually, one of these times, Kirby's going to have to get Nick's number. He came so close on multiple occasions. One of these times, Alabama's going to have to bend and break. You know what I'm saying? We'll see if Georgia's able to do it this year. But, I mean, it's not like Alabama's been blowing out Georgia in these games. They've been close, and you'd think, just probability's sake, that Georgia's going to give Alabama too much at one point.
So, but if we go by the history of those two teams in a big game in a championship setting, it means that Bryce Young will probably have to come out after the first half. And which
Yeah.
Alabama backup quarterback saves today?
So Paul Tyson, get chin straps ready because that might be the case. Yeah, you're right. Or maybe by that time it's Jalen Milroe. Who knows? But that would be a story, right?
I don't think you would want to talk to Kirby Smart if that situation happened again.
Yeah, I think you should just send out the backup regardless, just to see what Georgia panics, what they would do in the second half if Paul Tyson came out in the second half. I don't know what they would do. I think probably send shivers up their spine or something.
Yeah, I probably just like brought all kind of bad memories of Georgia fans if they're listening to this.
Sure, yeah, right.
They're like, they don't bring up those bad moments, but it is in the history of these two, and it feels like in the off season if all thing happens like you would expect to, that those two would meet in Atlanta. So
it's not always that case though. I mean, like that's the crazy thing is like you always think, but like Alabama could slip up, Georgia could slip up. I mean, both these teams, they're not indestructible either. That's going to make it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because who would have thought LSU a few years ago
Exactly. Yep.
Auburn's made runs, and then you've had last year you went into the year you probably thought Georgia should be the favorite, just talent. I mean, over Florida, but we make these predictions, but they don't always come out that way. And real quickly before I let you go, I like to ask this question this way when I do these previews for 2021. What are reasonable expectations for Alabama?
I mean, I think as long as Nick Saban's in charge, you're thinking playoff. It's going to be too hard to go back-to-back undefeated seasons. Look how long it took Alabama to have another undefeated season. So there'll be a game they slip up, but you'll have to see how it bounces from there. I mentioned that Ole Miss one. It'll probably be one that you're not really thinking, but I think Alabama's going to have to lose a game. But I expect them to be in the hunt for the playoff, depending on how everything bounces out. I expect them to be right there in the thick of the playoff.
Talking about a loss, I'm going to say this is just me looking at things, and I'm probably completely wrong. And Nick Saban would never say this ever in his career. There's been years I've kind of wondered when they did get a loss, I wonder if he was kind of happy about it because then he got their attention.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. And I think this is one of those years that because you're coming off of an undefeated season, you're going to need the challenge is going to be getting up for every game and not going into anything too overconfident. Because, I mean, you're coming off of probably the best college football team ever. And, there's still players that were a part of that. So they've got to know that this is a restart and that they're going to have to build that up again. So maybe, if they were to have a loss and it was somewhat early in the season and they were able to recover, that actually might be a good thing. I mean, you never really want to lose, right? But you can use that to your advantage for sure.
Yeah, I think he's done it before with the over the course of his great career, tenure here at Alabama. I think great. I don't even think great's the proper word for it. Phenomenal, legendary, everything. The greatest coach of all time. And Tony, I do appreciate you coming on the show today and previewing Alabama being the first part of the 14 teams in 14 weeks. And if the listeners and viewers want to follow you online, where can they find you and all the stuff you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. Our site's BamaInsider.com. And then you can follow me at Tony_Tsoukalas on Twitter. And also, check out our YouTube channel too, as well. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of find me in either on podcast or a video or just, my stories on the site as well.
All right. Sounds good, Tony. And once again, I appreciate you taking the time coming on the show, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Yeah, man, definitely.